For most of modern history, society has operated on a seemingly obvious assumption about gender. We tend to view it as an innate, internal truth, a psychological or spiritual essence located deep within us. Under this expressive model, the way we walk, talk, and dress are treated as secondary symptoms. They radiate outward, merely expressing our pre-existing core to the rest of the world. But in the late 1980s, philosopher Judith Butler presented an argument that inverted this entire causal relationship. In her 1988 essay, Performative Acts and Gender Constitution, Butler challenged the reigning academic discourse. She argued the mechanism works entirely in reverse. Our actions don't express a hidden core. Instead, those external actions actually construct the illusion of the core in the first place. Through Butler's lens, gender is an identity tenuously constituted in time. It is instituted through a stylized, continuous repetition of acts. If we can prove that the rigid, biological certainty of binary gender is actually an arbitrary cultural script, we can identify the precise mechanism needed to subvert it. To build Butler's model, we have to start with phenomenology, the branch of philosophy dealing with how social agents constitute reality through their lived experience. A crucial figure here is Maurice Merleau-Ponty, who analyzed the physical human body. He argued that the body should be understood as a set of possibilities to be realized. He called it an historical idea rather than a predetermined natural species. This requires a sharp distinction. On one hand is facticity, the raw, inert biological data of primary sexual characteristics. On the other hand is the lived body, an active process of taking up cultural tools and historical conventions to render those biological possibilities meaningful. The physical dimensions of flesh and bone are never denied. They remain distinct from the continuous process by which the body acquires its cultural significance. Feminist theorist Simone de Beauvoir adapted this phenomenological baseline to analyze women's oppression. She captured this in her famous maxim, "One is not born, but rather becomes a woman." This effectively disconnects the biological female from the cultural category of woman. Beauvoir describes gender as a sustained, repeated corporeal project. The body is compelled to conform to a historically delimited idea over time. While Butler builds on Beauvoir, she points out a severe flaw in the word project. Calling gender a project suggests it stems from a radical, originating free will, as if an individual wakes up in a vacuum and freely chooses their gender from a blank slate. But the body does not take on cultural meaning freely. The available styles of being are heavily conditioned and limited by pre-existing historical conventions. To fix this flaw, Butler introduces the term performative, and she uses it in a dual sense. It is both dramatic and non-referential. The dramatic aspect means gender is a public, rehearsed action, a theatrical script surviving the actors who step into the roles. Non-referential means it doesn't reflect a true interior self. The repetition of the steps creates the illusion that an inner self exists. Because individuals do not freely choose the script, Butler replaces Beauvoir's project with the concept of a strategy of survival. We perform our gender under a situation of duress. If you step off the painted footprints and fail to do your gender right, society initiates a set of punishments, ranging from indirect marginalization to outright violence. Discrete polar genders are not natural facts. They are punitively regulated fictions, disguised by collective agreement and enforced under strict duress. This raises a functional question. Why does society enforce this specific binary script with such severity? What exactly is the culture trying to protect? We can find the answer in the anthropological literature of kinship, utilizing thinkers like Michel Foucault and Claude Lévi-Strauss. Foucault pointed out that cultures associate a natural sex with a discrete gender and an ostensibly natural attraction to the opposite sex. He identified this as an entirely unnatural conjunction, built specifically to serve reproductive interests. To guarantee cultural reproduction, societies channel sexuality into mandatory heterosexual marriage, requiring bodies to be cultivated into discrete, opposing categories. Over time, the sedimentation of these norms obscures their origin, producing the peculiar phenomenon we casually call a natural sex. Compulsory heterosexuality is reproduced and concealed by training bodies to exhibit natural appearances and dispositions. The culture takes a localized reproductive strategy and successfully masks it as biological destiny. We can prove that these boundaries are completely arbitrary by looking at how society reacts to a subversive performance based on where it occurs. Butler uses the example of a transvestite. On a theater stage, a transvestite evokes applause. The audience's assumptions about gender remain safe because theatrical conventions separate the performance from real life. But if that exact person sits on the bus, the reaction turns to fear or rage. The safety barrier is gone. Without the protective framing of a stage, the act is no longer distinct from reality. It constitutes a new modality of gender, one that directly threatens the established binary categories regulating social life. The individual on the bus implicitly challenges the very distinction between appearance and reality. They demonstrate that the reality of gender does not exist in an essential inner core. It is real only to the extent it is performed. If gender reality is created entirely through sustained social performances, then the idea of an abiding masculinity or femininity is simply a regulatory fiction. This presents a serious political challenge for feminism. If the category of woman lacks an ontological reality, how do you organize a political movement to protect the people within it? Some theorists, like Gayatri Spivak and Julia Kristeva, argued for an operational essentialism. They suggested feminists could use the category of women as a political tool for strategic purposes. Butler warns against this compromise. Relying on an operational essentialism runs the risk of unwittingly preserving the exact binary restrictions and heterosexual frameworks that generate the oppression in the first place. Instead, she points to performativity itself. The illusion of binary gender relies on the continuous repetition of stylized acts. That repetition is its vulnerability. You can break the script through subversive repetition, performing out of turn or through unwarranted improvisation. Mistaking constrained actions for biological givens relinquishes power to the patriarchy. By deliberately improvising those acts, we reclaim the capacity to expand the corporeal field. We cannot dismantle binary gender by searching for a true, authentic self hidden inside the body. We dismantle it by weaponizing the performance itself, repeating the script differently.